of the COVID-19 pandemic, tours will be done differently.
We have now about to launch what we call our family and friends tours. That is so that we can adhere to the new protocols, so that the tours will be smaller.
The transformation of Nelson Island will have great benefits for the environment, the tourism sector, and by extension, the citizenry. The aim is to preserve our national heritage.
This was a production of the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications. The Ministry of Sport and Community Development hosted its annual Christmas Market Series, starting at Woodford Square. The ministry has been executing this initiative in order to help artisans showcase their talent while accessing large numbers of clients and earning revenue.
Between yesterday and today, we've had several of my students showing their wares.
I went back into the community development courses, and I went into soft furnishings again and fabric design, tie-dye.
What I did with community development, I did soaps and candle making. I also did jewelry.
It has allowed me, being a single parent, to really work on my own time, and it has actually evolved into a little business.
It has really helped me develop skills and also helped me be independent out here.
This was a production of the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications.
In August of 2020, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox was appointed to serve as Minister of Social Development and Family Services. There have been many noteworthy achievements by the ministry within her first 100 days in office. And here, a report to the nation is presented, highlighting the work of the minister, executive team, and staff of the ministry. Minister Cox has identified 9 strategic priority areas relating to the efficient operations of the ministry. These include: renew focus on vulnerable groups, rededicate the ministry to a service-oriented culture, build strategic partnerships, both local and international, accelerate implementation of the Information System Digitalization Plan, commence review of legislation. Her singular focus in the ministry is to ensure that all vulnerable groups within the population, irrespective of gender, age, creed, political affiliation, or disability, are treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve, provided with the assistance they require, and empowered to lift themselves as far as possible. Central to this lies the ability of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services to be more proactive and responsive, thereby ensuring that no person is left behind. COVID-19 presented the world with many challenges, and Trinidad and Tobago was not immune to its effects. Undeterred, however, the ministry, under the guidance of Minister Cox, was able to accomplish much of what it set out to do. Within the first 100 days of assuming office, Minister Cox, her executive, and staff were able to achieve the following: integration of a digitalization strategy in support of the suite of services and grants available through the ministry. Further prioritize the care and rehabilitation of street dwellers, leading a renewed strategy of collaboration with stakeholders involved with street dwellers. Generate greater awareness about food security as an effective tool in the fight against poverty. Place more strategic focus on client care and enhancement of service delivery at the ministry, especially in the areas of resolving queries and issues, removing bottlenecks, being proactive in identifying vulnerable citizens. Spearhead a whole-of-government approach to the revitalization of the social services sector. Developed a framework for establishing a first responders initiative for families, which will aid the ministry in maintaining an active presence within communities. Establishment of a Tobago desk to treat with social development matters related to Tobago. Increased the areas of access by making proactive interventions to resolve the challenges experienced by vulnerable persons. Engaged the Attorney General to make amendments to legislation related to the elderly, street dwellers, victims of trafficking, and persons with disabilities. There is no doubt that the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services has made significant strides in the first 100 days under the stewardship of Minister Cox. The Minister, Executive and staff of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services thank you for working together with them as they endeavor to serve you more effectively and efficiently.
We remain committed to helping, empowering, and transforming lives of this country's most vulnerable citizens.
Are you vaccinated against yellow fever? The Ministry of Health advises that you double-check that you are. This warning comes after laboratory testing by the Caribbean Public Health Agency CARFA confirmed the presence of the yellow fever virus in samples obtained from the bodies of dead monkeys in South Trinidad. It should be noted that there has been no human case of yellow fever recorded in Trinidad and Tobago since 1979, and that there is no outbreak of yellow fever at this time. However, its presence in monkeys opens the door for mosquitoes to bite these infected primates and then pass the virus along to humans. Through the ministry's expanded program on immunization, the majority of the population would already have been vaccinated against yellow fever. Nevertheless, you are advised to review the yellow fever section on your immunization card to ensure that you are. If you are not vaccinated against yellow fever, or if you are uncertain, visit your nearest public health center as soon as possible. It is especially important that children are kept current with their vaccination schedule. Children should receive their yellow fever vaccine when they are 1 year old. A single primary dose of the yellow fever vaccine provides lifelong protection. Persons who live near forested areas or those who visit, such as hikers, agriculturalists, hunters, veterinary personnel, and Defense Force personnel, should make certain that they are vaccinated. If you develop symptoms of jaundice, a yellow discoloration of the skin or eyes, fever, headache, muscle pain or fatigue, or severe symptoms of abdominal pains, bleeding of gums or vomiting, visit your healthcare provider or the nearest health facility. For further information or questions, contact the Insect Vector Control Division at 612-4823, or you may visit the Ministry of Health's website at health.gov.tt. And remember, double-check that you are vaccinated against yellow fever. This message brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications.
The Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of Youth Development and National Service, in fulfilling a mandate to restore youth centers across the country, toured the Malek Youth Facility. After the tour, Minister Hines commented on the need to have the facility reopened.
This is indeed a remarkable facility, a very important community asset it is. We came with a view of carrying out the mandate of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, more specifically the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, whose mandate is to advance the youth agenda. We saw the beauty and the cosmetology units upstairs. We saw the carpentry. We saw the electrical area. They use this facility to host christenings and weddings and other social engagements graduation exercises, and what have you. So we have seen its value, and we have seen the need to improve our maintenance and our cleaning techniques in order to maintain it so that it could continue to serve. I'm quite pleased. I feel a sense of great welcome from the manager, his assistant manager, and the staff of this facility, and I would like to thank you, Mr. Manager, for that. We are quite excited at your thoughts about getting the programs resumed through and past COVID-19, and we support that. We just have to ensure, as I have said twice before, that it is all in keeping with the current laws of Trinidad and Tobago and the health regulations, but we would like to open our doors again, just as is happening in the Ministry of Education at the fastest possible time.
The Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, committed to promoting youth development and encouraging civic-minded citizens to contribute to national service across Trinidad and Tobago. This was a production of the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome to our program. The Messenger of Allah, Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, he said in one of his sayings that the servant does not attain the reality of faith. In other words, faith and Iman, believing in Allah, is not really fully perfected unless he loves for people what he loves for himself of goodness. We spoke about that before, but let's talk about it a little more. Many times we have an opportunity to do good for others, and it doesn't take away from our own selves. For example, if we have a relative who has died and we give charity in their name, we get the result of the charity, the blessings of the charity, but they get the blessings as well. Even though they have died, we're giving charity in their name, we're getting the blessings and they're getting the blessings as well. When we give somebody something to break the fast, they get something to break the fast. We get the reward of giving them something to break the fast, and we get the reward of their fasting as well. That's how generous our Allah is, without their reward for their fasting being diminished in the least. Why? Because Allah wants us to learn this quality, that our faith in Allah is only going to be perfected when we have developed that love for others, for the things that we love for ourselves. When we have developed that sense of giving, that sense of charity, that sense of empathy, that sense of sympathy, that wanting for others what we want for ourselves, wanting the goodness for others like the goodness we want for ourselves. And if we develop that quality, then we're going to do things to help people. We're going to be charitable. We're going to pay our zakah, our compulsory charity. We're going to help others wherever we can help them. We're going to be kind to our parents. We're going to be merciful to our youngsters. We're going to do whatever we can do, because that love we have for them is the love that Allah has put in our hearts that will build our own Iman. So let's use this month of Ramadan to build that Iman, to build that faith, and to build love for others. Assalamu alaikum.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على
Line and Length, the #1 cricket program in the West Indies, is on TTT. Line and Length brings you up-to-date interviews, analysis, and highlights on the game in the region and internationally. Plus, there's an added bonus to receive a gift of gear each month with our grassroots program. Go to lineandlength.net to learn more. Line and Length in association with Massey United Insurance on TTT.
After we have been exposed to an infection, our immune system remembers the threat, in particular by producing antibodies. These are proteins that circulate in the blood and throughout the body. They quickly recognize and disable the invader upon contact, thereby preventing or minimizing illness. This is why we usually do not get sick with the same bug twice. We are immune. Vaccines mimic this process, encouraging the immune system to make antibodies without us having to go through the illness. Some of the leading SARS-CoV-2 vaccine candidates are mRNA vaccines, based on incorporating the genetic blueprint for the key spike protein on the virus surface into a formula that, when injected into humans, instructs our own cells to make the spike protein. In turn, the body then makes antibodies against the spike protein, and they protect us against viral infection. This strategy is faster than more traditional approaches, which often involve generating weakened or inactivated forms of a live virus, or making large amounts of the spike protein to determine whether they can prompt an antibody response. Once a potential vaccine is discovered, a number of checkpoints exist before it can be administered to people. First, preclinical tests, which involve experiments in a laboratory and with animals. Scientists must ensure the vaccine candidate is not only effective, but also safe. For example, an antibody response to an imperfect vaccine could, under extremely rare circumstances, end up increasing the danger of becoming infected. When the potential vaccine achieves the necessary preclinical results, clinical trials can begin in a small group of people. As the vaccine candidate advances, it is tested on increasing numbers of people, with scientists and doctors closely monitoring safety, efficacy, and dosing. Upon successful completion of clinical trials, the vaccine candidate must be reviewed and approved by regulatory agencies such as the FDA before large-scale manufacturing and distribution gets underway and the licensed vaccine is administered widely.
The Laventel Youth Facility is one of the smaller centers available to young people. One of 6 nationwide, this facility has the reputation of hosting outstanding cultural groups as well as accommodating academic training classes, youth counseling, and programs by NGOs and individuals in the community. On February 6, 2021, the Honorable Fitzgerald Hines, Minister of Youth Development and National Service, visited the facility along with his permanent secretary and senior members of staff. Betty Ann Augustin, manager of the facility, greeted the minister and then escorted him on a tour. After the tour, Minister Hines shared plans for the facility.
The facility is in need of some improvement. It is in need of certain pieces of equipment, and we have asked the manager of this facility, following this tour, to issue to the permanent secretary a comprehensive report on all aspects of the physiological circumstance of this plant, as well as matters pertaining to its use and its relationship to the larger community. I am looking forward to that report, which we will not just read, but we will study, and we will learn from you, Madam Manager, what are the advantages, what are the challenges that you face, and we do so with a view of repairing and fixing those challenges, because the ultimate objective is to fulfill the mandate of the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service. Part of our mandate is to create a safe space here so that the children of the community, the young people in particular, who might be distressed, who may be traumatized, who may be threatened, who may be without hope, this space, it should be their oasis in the desert. They should be able to come here and to drink, if I may be permitted a metaphor, of the cool, clean, clear, running water of this fountain, so that they can be refreshed, they can be rejuvenated, their hope could be restored, and they could resume their path to personal and community and national development.
The Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, committed to promoting youth development and encouraging civic-minded citizens to contribute to national service across Trinidad and Tobago. This was a production of the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications.
15 minutes past the hour of 8 o'clock, and it's the Team Up Morning Show with the girl I Will. We're going to go to news in a little bit, but don't forget, guys, don't make them ask, wear your mask.
This is TTT. Live for local.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. I'm DK Roster. This is TTT News. It's time for the headlines. Concern over hospital occupancy as COVID-19 cases skyrocket. 399 new cases, 4 more deaths. Healthy boost in supply of oil and gas as production in Ruby Field begins ahead of schedule. And in sport, TNT's Futsal World Cup dream takes a hit with a 6-2 loss to the Dominican Republic. The number of active cases of COVID-19 in the country has crossed 3,000. The latest update from the Ministry of Health says there are some 399 new cases of COVID-19 and 4 more deaths due to the virus. The COVID-19 death toll now stands at 189. The ministry says the patients were a middle-aged man without pre-existing health conditions, a middle-aged woman with comorbidities, and 2 elderly men, 1 with comorbidities and 1 without. Of the known active cases, 276 are patients in hospital. 2,307 persons remain in home isolation. Since the first case was reported in March of last year, 12,105 positive cases were reported in Trinidad and Tobago. 55,259 people have received the first dose of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, while 288 have received the second dose so far. Principal Medical Officer of Institutions, Dr. Miriam Abdul-Richards, continues to be concerned about rising COVID-19 hospital occupancy rates, noting a 10% jump in the last few days. And with a shift in pattern where younger people are succumbing to the virus locally, she is urging the population to adhere to public health regulations now more than ever. Sunilala reports.
On May 3rd, overall hospital occupancy rates in the parallel healthcare system stood at 48%, which increased to 50% by May 4th. But Principal Medical Officer Dr. Miriam Abdul-Richards says that figure jumped to 58% on Tuesday afternoon, and she's worried that occupancy rates would be overwhelmed in the next 7 days. The number of people on the high dependency unit is even more concerning, jumping from 40 to 70% overnight.
Our ward occupancy rates have increased within 24 hours from 50 to 60%. Which is a 10% increase, and our ICU occupancy rates have decreased from 50% to 40%.
But she says the percentage decrease in ICU is not due to patients being discharged, but because of a rise in deaths in the last few days. Dr. Abdul Richards is also warning the younger population to take heed of the virus due to the shift in pattern where young people in their 30s have been joining the list of COVID-19 victims. She warned against the concept of creating COVID-19 bubbles since young people could be asymptomatic and spreading the virus.
Young people, we are seeing deaths and sudden deaths from the 30s onward. Please don't think you are immune. Please, this concept of a bubble that I've been hearing touted around does not work.
Epidemiologist Dr. Avery Hines is also warning the younger population of congregating during this critical period, especially with the news that younger people are being affected severely by the virus.
And what it does is it serves to remind younger people who sometimes forget that this virus can indeed have adverse and fatal outcomes in younger age groups. It reminds them that they are not immortal, they're not immune to the adverse outcomes.
Dr. Abdul Richards is cautioning people not to congregate or mix with others at the supermarkets during these dangerous times. Sonolala, TTT News.
10% of COVID-19 samples sent for genetic sequencing at the UWI St. Augustine campus have so far been confirmed to have the Brazilian P1 variant. This according to Professor of Molecular Genetics and Virology, Christine Carrington, who notes that this percentage does not reflect the prevalence of the variant locally. She says of 476 samples received for genetic sequencing, 375 have been sequenced, 74 are currently in process, and 27 of those have been deemed unsuitable for sequencing.
175 sequenced from Trinidad and Tobago. To date, about 10% of the P1 variant, which, as I said, was first detected in Brazil, and as you are aware, was first detected in Trinidad about 2 weeks ago. I should emphasize that the P1 is the first variant of concern to have been detected in the general population in Trinidad and Tobago.
Professor Carrington maintains that the AstraZeneca vaccine still provides some level of protection against the deadly P1 variant.
And when it comes to the vaccines, while some vaccines may be less effective against P1, a recent scientific article, for example, this one is not yet peer-reviewed, showed very good evidence that antibodies from people who received the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and also those who received the mRNA vaccines, they were able to effectively neutralize P1.
She reminds that the P1 variant has been seen to be highly transmissible and is urging the population to take all precautionary measures. Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Ansel Dennis, is urging Tobagonians to not become complacent. Speaking at Wednesday's post-executive media briefing, he stressed that the increase in COVID cases on the island should be a cause for concern.
Here in Tobago, we have moved from 6 cases back then on March 31st to 56 cases as I stand here today. And while some may suggest that we here in Tobago do not need to engage in the kind of lockdown and in the kind of caution that is required in the sister isle Trinidad, I want to suggest to us that 56 cases here on the island is nothing to be comfortable about.
Mr. Dennis said that the THA has spent millions in support provisions for Tobagonians since the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We have spent $56 million in support to businesses and individuals on this island to ensure that they are able to survive during this period, to ensure that they are able to adjust and adapt. Another $25 million will be identified to continue to give that kind of assistance to the people of Tobago.
Mr. Dennis also admonished the public servants employed within the Department of Social Services to be compassionate and go the extra mile to assist residents on island. He explained that those who received rental assistance in the past and who continue to face financial challenges as a result of the pandemic are free to reapply. Remember, you can also keep up to date with the latest stories on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at TTT Live on Live. More to come. Stay with us.
Make them ask. Wear your mask.
Line and Length, the #1 cricket program in the West Indies, is on TTT. Line and Length brings you up-to-date interviews, analysis, and highlights on the game in the region and internationally. Plus, there's an added bonus to receive a gift of gear each month with our grassroots program. Go to lineandlength.net to learn more. Line and Length in association with Massey United Insurance on TTT.
Welcome back. Trinidad and Tobago can expect to see a healthy boost in its supply of both crude oil and natural gas as the Ruby Development Project begins production ahead of schedule. Operator BHP advised that it is expected to announce first oil from the development in early May, and first gas is expected to occur shortly after. On completion of all development activities later this year, the Ruby field is expected to produce up to 16,000 gross barrels of oil per day and 80 million gross standard cubic feet of natural gas per day. In July 2020, NGC and BHP signed a gas sales contract for the sales of 100% of the gas produced from the Ruby field. NGC, as a joint venture partner, is also entitled to a share of the field's oil production. Dozens of angry young men in the village of Mayo are calling on cement producer Trinidad Cement Limited to allow them to earn a living. The 40-plus youths who have been planting short crops in the area for almost a year say they have suddenly found themselves blocked from going to their crops. On Wednesday, they reached out to the media to highlight their plight.
So many opportunity now where the land is abandoned and due to rubbish being thrown and crime in this situation because the cars get burned down in this area. So we say, hey, there's opportunity for us to make our money and feed the family. So that people come and invest in this. Invest the time and invest whatever little money we have.
Garo said he is an employee at TCL, but it has been 2 years since he was able to work there. He added that because of the pandemic, the villagers decided to go into farming.
It's young individuals here, you know, who trying to do something positive. Why it is now we're trying to stop us. So if we start to do something negative now, and the security then come and we start to pelt bottle at them and bust head and you know what I'm saying? The Mayo villagers, them are not disciplined, and not respect what you youths on them.
He added that the culverts and no trespassing signs were recently placed around their crops. Mr. Figaro also noted that elsewhere in the community, persons were also planting on TCL land, but they were being allowed to continue. When TTT reached out to TCL for their take on the situation, we were told that there was no one on the compound who could take our call. 65% of restaurants have had to close their doors in Tobago since the government announced several lockdown measures in March 2020. To save the industry, President of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association said government intervention and the establishment of a standing committee is needed in these troubling times. Kimberly D'Souza tells us more.
Tobago's hotel and tourism sector is in a grim state since the COVID-19 restrictions were implemented in March 2020. President of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, Chris James, said after almost 14 months of lockdown, several businesses have had to close and an estimated 6,000 employees have been affected.
Dive sector, we had 12 dive operators in 2019. We're down to 3 now. And according to the restaurant sector, we've lost about 65% of the restaurants. Wow. Accommodation is holding on to some extent. We have lost some. Some have gone into long-term rental.
Mr. James said a standing committee needs to be established to discuss a 5, 10 and 15-year plan to revitalize the sector, as the region is showing positive signs that persons do want to travel. He said one of the options that can be considered is extending the 3-month stay in Tobago for international visitors.
We are one of the only countries that has a limit on the stay of an international visitor. As you will know, Barbados, St. Lucia, I think Antigua, they've all given 1-year stays for people to work away from home. It's a tremendous business. I mean, they've done very well. Turks and Caicos has done very well out of that. So it's a case of sitting down and identifying the problems. This is an ideal time to do it.
He also called for government intervention through its loan guarantee program to allow a consolidation of loans for businesses or an amnesty on tax. He said businesses are not earning revenue but are still being asked to pay utilities such as electricity bills. Mr. James suggested that the Tobago House of Assembly meet with the association to determine how best to save one of the island's most important sectors. To further save the industry, he said government should boost its vaccination program. Kimberly D'Souza, TTT News.
The Met Office says remain alert for street flooding and gusty winds. TTT meteorologist Ian Wallace has the forecast next. Stay with us.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. We report the news. News in real time. News across Trinidad and Tobago. Wherever you are. TTT News. Connect.
When we talk about rice farming, Trinidad and Tobago is probably not the first country that would come to mind. But right here in Moruga, there exists a special grain of dry land, wild rice that people all around the world are willing to pay top dollar for.
Especially here, you can see it. It's in belly here, as they would say, and then it would grow upwards, and then it will fall over like that.
When you say in belly, is it that the actual grains, each individual grain?
It's in there, yeah.
In there.
Yes.
Fresh out the pot. Your mouth full. That's important. That's what's important. That's the real test.
Hello. We've seen most of the rain clouds subsiding throughout today, and the Meteorological Office has discontinued the adverse weather alert. So we're now back to a green risk level, which means there's no hazards, therefore, of the rainfall that we have been seeing. That obviously is still fading out. We're just seeing 1 or 2 pockets of showers, especially for southern Trinidad. So there's still a possibility of street flooding, but at least the adverse weather alert has been discontinued. So tonight then, across Tobago in particular, should be just partly cloudy, 1 or 2 brief showers likely across Tobago as you go overnight into tomorrow morning. You may also see some slivers of sunshine, particularly towards the north. But for southern areas of Trinidad, it's still quite cloudy and damp. Still expecting a few showers, especially overnight, the first part of your morning. For northern areas of Trinidad, it will likely be a partly cloudy night. And also, you would notice that mostly cloudy skies tomorrow morning and maybe 1 or 2 brief showers. But again, it will be that southern area of Trinidad that will likely see most of those showers, especially through Penal, Point Fortin and Moruga. And there is a medium chance of you seeing a thunder shower as well. So you could be seeing those gusty winds or street flooding in those heavier showers. Tonight's low, 23 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow's high, a warmer 32 degrees Celsius. Now, through Friday, we're expecting yet another bout of heavy weather. A lot of the showers are coming through, be coming in from Trinidad, pushing up towards Tobago. Possibility of extended rainfall once we get to late Friday night and going into Saturday. For fisherfolk, moderate seas 2 meters offshore with those fresh northeast to east winds of 15 knots through tomorrow. And if you are heading out, we've got your high tide at 12:50 a.m. and the next one at 1 p.m. Now, across the Caribbean, at least for the southern windward islands, they've been seeing occasional cloudiness from time to time, but that is clearing. Just 1 or 2 spotty showers further up towards the Leeward Islands. And for the Greater Antilles, we're still expecting to see mostly settled weather here. Just 1 or 2 passing showers around Hispaniola, Port-au-Prince, 30 Celsius. So that's your forecast, and that's it from me.
Police in Tobago are investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of a 40-year-old woman who collapsed at a bus shed along the Shervan Road in Buku. She's been identified as Dahlia Cleopatra Jack. Eyewitnesses told the TTT News that while on their way to a nearby supermarket, they heard the woman screaming and went to her assistance.
We heard a lady bawling on the ground. So we crossed the road and my cousin asked her what happened, and she said she had problems breathing. So we immediately contacted the ambulance and the police, and from that she wanted water also. So he went and brought her water for her. She never touched it or drank it, and she kept tossing and turning, bawling in pain.
TTT News was told Ms. Jack became unconscious and was later declared dead by paramedics. The cause of death is yet to be ascertained. Here now are the details of the day's market activity on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange.
Trading on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange produced a volume of 187,370 shares with a traded value of $3,590,881.79. NCB Financial Group Limited was the volume leader with 57,493 stock units changing hands. Investors bought and sold the stocks of 14 companies, with 4 increasing, 4 declining, and the 6 ending the day unchanged.
Remember, you can keep up to date with all that is happening on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at TTT Live Online. And this is where we end our live streaming of the TTT News. Up next in sport, Windies retain contracts for Akil Hussain and Joshua De Silva.
When we talk about rice farming, Trinidad and Tobago is probably not the first country that would come to mind. But right here in Moruga, there exists a special grain of dry land, wild rice that people all around the world are willing to pay top dollar for.
Especially here, you can see it. It's in belly here, as they would say, and then it would grow upwards, and then it will fall over like that.
When you say in belly, is it that the actual grains, each individual grain
it's in there here.
In there?
Yeah. Yes.
Fresh out the pot. Your mouth full. That's important. That's what's important. That's the real test.
News happens anytime, anywhere. And when it happens, we are there. We report the news in real time. TTT News. Connect.
Needless to say, it was not the result they were expecting, but the TNT men fell to a 6-2 defeat against the Dominican Republic in a crucial Group A clash at the CONCACAF Futsal Championships over in Guatemala City. As we hear from Ruskin Mark, the result effectively ends the World Cup dream for the local men, unless they can pull off a miracle against highly favored host Guatemala in their second group game.
This was a big moment for both teams, especially the Dominican Republic, who lost to Guatemala in their opener 4-2 the night before and were making their debut in the CONCACAF tournament this year. But they started the better of the two and led TNT early thanks to a neat finish by the prolific Marco Gomez after 5 minutes. TNT tried to respond but had difficulty passing 17-year-old keeper Jose Perez, who, like Gomez, plays his football in Spain. But it was the Dominican Republic who created the better chances and could have easily added to their lead. They would eventually double up when TNT turned the ball over at mid-court and Ricardo Alvarez made them pay by Megan keeper Andre Marchand. They would tack on another shortly after and made it 3-0 thanks to Guillermo Lopez, another Spanish-based player. Perez would continue to impress in goal for the Dominican Republic as TNT threatened, but he could do nothing when Chebini's chip was headed in by Keston George for 3-1. The men in white would regain control of the game and came close on a couple more occasions. They would regain their 3-goal cushion when that man Marco Gomez shows a deft touch to control a difficult ball and then tapped in calmly for his second. He would be on spot to complete his hat-trick with a rocket pass match and in goal for TNT. Jamil Neptune would then score the goal of the match with some wicked skill that left Lopez for dead and then slotted in at the near post for 5-2. But TNT would concede another late when Marcel Sestero poked home for 6-2 the final score. This leaves TNT Haiti needing to beat Guatemala by 4 clear goals in order to deny the Dominican Republic a chance of advancing to the second round. Ruskin